You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at SBT Songs, or check us out at chrisblair.com. What's up, everybody? Chris Blair here, and on this week's episode of Stories Behind the Songs, we are going back to the 90s. We're going to go back and talk about some of the biggest songs on country radio 30 years ago. And I can say that because Bryan White, this week's guest, was a big artist back then, and we are basically the same age, so I can get away with saying that. I have known him for years. Even before I really met him, I was learning to play his songs on guitar to impress the girls in my college dorm. That's right, I had to do it. In this episode, we're going to discuss some of his biggest songs, including Someone Else's Star and Rebecca Lynn, as well as songs he's written for other big artists like Diamond Rio. We also talk about the challenge of writing uptempo when you're used to writing sad songs, crafting unlikely chord progressions and key changes, having a hit outside of the US, and duetting with the legend herself, Shania Twain. Bryan performs a snippet of his song Sittin on Go, as well as his personal favorite, Dustbowl Dreams, which he wrote with Alan Shamblin, and he shares how this one reconnected him with his Oklahoma roots. I just loved sitting down with Bryan. He's such a great guy, and I hope you enjoyed it too. If you did, make sure to share this episode with your friends and give us a follow. We are so passionate about uplifting songwriters and their stories, and it's because of you, the listeners, that we get to continue to do what we do. So thank you for listening. Let's get to it. Here is my buddy, Bryan White. All right, here we are with my buddy Bryan. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. You?
Good. Thanks for coming in today. This is going to be a blast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, there's so much I want to dive into. So let's just, I want to go back to the beginning. I always kind of start with how everybody got into music. But you've had such an amazing career, as an artist yourself, as a songwriter, just so many things. So, let's just go back. You're from Oklahoma, and you kind of grew up in a musical family. So like, walk me through what it was like, starting to play drums at 5 years old and just growing up around that.
Wow. How'd you know that?
We've known each other for a long time, dude.
Man,
but
I guess you might say I got it honest. I mean, my parents were musicians. They kind of got bit by the bug in high school, and they had rock bands, and, there was a local college close to where they grew up, and my dad commandeered all these horn players, and at one time they had it was a 14, 15-piece band, and my granddad funded a couple of sessions for them in Oklahoma City, and I've still got those 45s, of those recordings they did. I've got some 2-inch analog stuff on them too, and it's so neat to have. But I really got it honest, music was always in my household. My brother sings, he plays, and my great grandmother sang. It was just really a common thread through our family, and where I got really bit by the bug was my dad had a real religious experience with Merle Haggard in his early 80s days, and that sort of I got the residual of that, and I think really because of my dad is where my love of country music comes from. I mean, I can just remember him learning John Conley and Merle Haggard and Ronnie Millsap songs, and that stuff just got inside me. It's just the melodies were timeless, and the lyrics were just unbelievable, and I've just never been the same since. So
yeah. So when was it that you decided to move to Nashville?
October 1st of 1992, I moved to Nashville. So I took a trip up with my dad. Prior to that, maybe closer to what would be, I guess, the winter time prior to my move, and my dad took me to a couple of things, and I had a couple of meetings up here, and then I went home, and I just kind of knew that I was supposed to be here, and I scrounged up as much as I could, and my mom helped me move here in 1992. I think that's like 31 years ago now.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy, man. So That was right after you graduated high school, right?
Yeah, the same year, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a year older than I am, and we'll get into this because I may have told you some of these stories over the years because we've known each other for so long now. But when I was in college, there's just so many stories of me sitting around playing your songs to girls in in college. Like, yeah, man, it was full circle when I finally got to meet you and we just hit it off and all of that. But
that's awesome.
So you are here in 92,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of let's just start diving into the stories behind the songs. Because
Sure.
you got your first record deal at 20 years old, which is incredible, and it just kind of like blew up after that. Just a couple platinum albums, gold album, just several number ones. So what was the transition from the day that you pulled into town until you got the deal with Asylum?
Oh, wow. Well, I really attribute so much of it I can see God's providence through all of it. I really can. I was really fortunate to be I ended up in the company of so many good people that I'm still very dear friends with. I ended up at GC Management, which was Glenn Campbell had a publishing company and a management team, and I ended up there. That was my first publishing deal, and they also the management side of it, they took me on, and they had another band called Pearl River at the time. They were on Capitol Records, and they wanted me to sort of get my feet wet, make a little money. I was singing demos for songwriters and trying to learn how to write, but they sent me out on the road with those guys to sell T-shirts for them when I was, 19. And so, I had to grow up pretty fast. I had to learn how to do inventory and, try to be a good salesman. And in the middle of their set every night, and these are clubs everywhere, 500-seater clubs, and they would pull me up in the middle of their set to do a song, and most of the time I remember I would do Linda by Steve Wariner or a Ronnie Millsap song or something, and somebody would kind of man the table for me while I went up and sang one, and then I'd go back to the table. And I remember being in, I believe it was either Phoenix or Tucson, that Marty, my manager, called me and said, Asylum is going to sign you to an 18-month developmental deal. You don't hear that. People talk about developmental deals as much these days. But back then, what that meant was we're going to see how you develop and see if you progress into something commercially viable, I guess, and fortunately it ended up, going, in my favor and going well. But that's I remember that's when things started to kind of move in that direction. And a guy named Billy Joe Walker Jr. Really was the angel in my corner that sort of brought me to town and took me around and, pitched me. And on his dime, I would jump on the end of some of his sessions and we would cut tracks. And, what we were pitching around was unfinished demos, like one take vocals. They weren't like, we didn't have a budget. So they weren't like super polished demos that we were playing for people. But fortunately, we had a few passes, but Asylum decided to sign me and that changed my whole life,
Yeah.
That was a long answer, but sorry.
No, it's great. So, all right, well, let's dive into that first record.
Yeah.
Someone Else's Star, Sittin' on Go, So Much for Pretending, Rebecca Lynn, just like huge songs that, again, these were great songs for me. And, when I was out playing cover band stuff and singing for the girls in the hallway of college. So I actually saw you perform at a fair in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but it would have been sometime, I went to college in 93. So it would have been sometime between 93 and probably 95. But I'll never forget because I would research and I would read all the liner notes of the CDs and everything back then. It was like, man, this guy's only a year older than me. and you played just an incredible show. But then in the middle of the show, you went back and you jumped on the drums and you played the drums. And I was just like, man, I was blown away. Those were just such massive hits. So take us into your mind with those songs and like how they came about and what it was like during that part of the career.
I was trained in the early days to compartmentalize my answers in interviews. So forgive me if I go long on these. I'm always thinking soundbite, you know. When I started working on pre-production stuff for my first record with Billy Joe Walker Jr., I could still visually see all of it. We just started getting a huge pile of songs together. I was writing a lot. Fortunately, I had a few songs of my own on that record, but I was still really learning a lot about who I was as a writer and how to write and all that kind of stuff. But Derek George, who's one of my best friends, I mean, great record producer, great songwriter, great singer, player, triple threat. He was my guitar player back in the day, went on to have his own amazing success. He was still in this band on Capitol Records, and you know, I had kind of gotten a couple of the tunes that their producer passed on, and one of them was Someone Else's Star, and the other one was, well, no, I don't think they passed on Rebecca Lynn, but he told me about Rebecca Lynn. So Derek was a big part of me hearing those first two songs. And so Someone Else's Star was a demo that Skip Ewing had done. He co-wrote that with Jim Weatherly, who wrote Midnight Train to Georgia, by the way. And then Derek told me about a song called Rebecca Lynn on one of Skip's records. And Billy was really good friends with Skip, and Billy was very familiar with those songs. He just hadn't put two and two together for them to work for me. And then, you know, a bunch of other things kind of fell in, and we had this pile of songs, and we went in, and Billy was in a booth. He's a phenomenal guitar player, and I was in the other booth, and we just, you know, it was analog tape, you know, hey, we're rolling, and we just spent 2 or 3 days in a row cutting all these songs, just acoustic demos, just to see if the chemistry was there with those songs, if the connection was there with those songs, if I could kind of make them my own. Someone Else's Star was great. We did Rebecca Lynn, and I remember we had a bunch of tunes from the Bonnie Raitt's Green Light album of all things. And so there were some, I think there were some Paul Kennerly tunes in there, and we just had a whole pile of things. But those two songs that really made it out of there was Rebecca Lynn and Someone Else's Star. And Someone Else's Star, we ended up leaving the demo the way it was, and Kyle Lenning, who was co-produced with Billy, basically cut some instrumentation around it. But Someone Else's Star was a demo. Wow. And it was a one-take vocal. I was 19 when I sang it, and it ended up being my first #1 record. And so it was really a sweet story for, you know, for the writers, but for me, for that song being such a really great song, and something that I just felt like we were synonymous, you know, that song and it just seemed like a marriage, you know, and it ended up being on the charts, I think, for 18 weeks, and then it went #1, and kind of never looked back after that point. Everything just started to kind of fall into place, you know, and then other songs came behind that. But I think for us, we were just really fortunate to stumble onto some really, really great songs, and that is such an important, crucial aspect of the beginning of a career. You have to write it's like the George Strait song Troubadour. You got to ride in on a great song, and I was so fortunate to ride in on that song. You know? Yeah,
you're a great writer yourself. You've got songs cut by Diamond Rio, Neil McCoy, and so on. I want to dive into a little bit of that in a little bit, but you know, most of the people that we have on we're diving into, you know, songs that other people have recorded, that they've written. Um, I'm curious to get your perspective as an artist of what it was like. Like, what did you have to personally go to figure out like that connection, right? Because you can't just sing a song. You've got to feel it, and to be able to get those emotions out melodically for everybody. What was that like for you when you started hearing all these songs by Skip and everybody else that really connected you to him?
Man, something about the songs that had a lot of longing and a lot of ache had a significant ache in them. I don't know what it was, but those were the songs that I don't think it was like a plan in a master plan in my mind. It just those really mournful, sad songs were the ones that I seemed to vocally gravitate toward and was able to sink my teeth into and kind of make them my own. You know, I don't know why. They were just, and the hardest ones to find and write were always the up tempos. And I think that's still kind of the case today. It's just, I don't know. We used to call them no-brainers back in the day, but it was funny. The no-brainers to me were the harder ones to write, because you almost had to sort of, you wanted it to have a bit of integrity, but you still wanted to, kind of dumb it down a little bit to where it was just more fun and felt good. And you weren't as worried about a lyric,
Yeah. Yeah. So good. You're, I think it was Sittin' on Go. I'm trying to go back and remember how I played it. Like the songs that you did do that were upbeat, like, okay, so my personal take, the songs that were more of the ballads were just like you said. I mean, they would just hit you. Like they were really deep, well-written songs. The other thing that I really loved is like Sittin' on Go. It had like these key changes, or not key changes, but the chord progressions that was just like, whoa, what is that? And I remember just diving into like, that chord is not supposed to be in this, And so, was that a part of the demo, or was that something that you did as you were doing the song?
Man, that was the demo. And that was, if I could say I had a thing or found a niche, that would be probably part of it. I loved choruses that lifted, and kind of had a key change. I just always thought that was so exciting and interesting to my ear. And I think it kind of gave my records an identity to a degree too. I loved all that kind of stuff, I remember back in the day, my little writing team that I felt like was we felt like the dream team for a while was John Tiro, Derek George, and myself. And we would write all the time. And sometimes on the road, I'm wearing a whole different hat. So sometimes I didn't feel like writing. Sometimes I wanted to sleep till 12. But Derek was always that guy that was always poking me with a stick, going, hey, man, we got to be creative. Let's go get after it. But we would wrestle with choruses and key changes and stuff like that all the time, because if we wanted it to be interesting and fresh and different. And it's funny that you say that, because that was one of the things that really caught my ear about that tune. Was I was like, whoa, this is nice. And then trying to get back to the mainland was a challenge too. When you would write a song with a key change, it's like, all right, we got to figure out how to get back down to the mainland. So it's fun.
So good. Well, you want to, I'll let you pick, but you want to play a little bit of one of them?
Since you mentioned Sittin' on Go, I can play a little bit.
Let's do it.
Sittin' on Go if you want.
Yeah.
Hopefully my guitar's relatively in tune here, and I always have to give kudos to the writers. I'm so grateful. I remember in the early days being a little bit like, well, how come, because Kyle was always pretty, tough on songs, and I remember coming in a lot to play him songs, and I would be so intimidated, but proud of my song, but intimidated at the same time because I'm having to play it for Kyle Linning, and a lot of my stuff got shot down in the first record, and I was always like, you know, trying so hard to get on my own record, you know, and but the songs that made it on there, I'm really proud of because they were really a good representation of who I was and who I was becoming, you know, like Look at Me Now, and I mean that's definitely something. I still play that live in the show. I love that song. And then there was a song called You Know How I Feel. Kind of a somber kind of a tune. I'm relatively in tune here, so we'll see what happens.
All right.
No, I'm nowhere near. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, you're good.
As soon as you put that capo on, it goes haywire. Let's see what.
You've got that producer ear too.
I'm sorry, guys. All right. Close enough for the girls I go out with, anyway.
All right.
Okay.
I'm waiting on the green light to make you mine, but your heart's just taking its own sweet time. You wanna be sure if you sink or swim, but grab on to me, just jump on in. You let it safe, but baby I'll wait. Ooh, whenever you're ready, I could be yours in a second or so. Ooh, baby, come and get me, my heart's sitting on go. It's off to the races. All you gotta do is let me know. Ooh, I'm ready and I'm waiting. My heart's sitting on go.
All right.
That's my morning voice there.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it is early. Man, thank you so much. That's amazing.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny when you get to my age, you don't worry and fret over a whole lot. And for me, it's like some days I step up to the mic and it's there, and some days it's not. But on the days it's kind of rough and not doing what I want it to do, I have such a peace about it. I just go, okay, and I just keep rolling. But I love that song. I always have. It's a great track, and I still remember so many great memories about cutting that track too. I think we cut that at Woodland in East Nashville, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Eddie
That's so
Bears
cool.
and Brent Mason and Glenn Worf and all those guys.
Man.
So
This episode is brought to you by All Clear Audio. All Clear Audio is a custom and universal in-ear monitor company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a storefront right here in Nashville, Tennessee, where we film the Stories Behind the Songs podcast. All Clear strives to not only be the leading provider of high-quality, custom, and universal fit in-ear monitors, but also leads the way in customer service and care. With customs starting at dual driver all the way to 13 drivers, there's something for everyone. Head over to allclair.com, that's ALCLAIR.com, and use our code SBTSongs to receive 10% off. Thank you for the sponsorship. We love you guys at All Clear, and we hope that everyone out there listening takes advantage of this and enjoys them as well. I want to talk about, you accomplished something that, is more common today with everything we have with Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram, TikTok, all these things, right?
mm-hmm.
But when you were at the top of your game as an artist, and all these things were going on, we didn't have any of that. And I want to dive into "God Gave Me You."
Oh wow!
Because I love that song, and it did so well here in the States. But then it also became a big hit in the Philippines several years later. But still before all of that stuff was really like where it is today. So how did that happen? What was it about that song you think that that made it kind of a worldwide song?
Man, I have to start kind of at the beginning with it. My friends Jamie Houston, Andy Goldmark, and James Dean Hicks wrote that song. Jimmy's a dear friend of mine whom I've learned a lot about songwriting over the years from. Kentucky boy. And I was doing a record. It was my fourth record for Asylum. And they gave Derek, George, and I the go to produce 6 sides. And Dan Huff did the other 6 sides for that record. And we were sort of on the back end of finishing the record. We still needed a couple more, like dead ringers. And Jimmy sent me a copy of the demo for "God Gave Me You," and I remember flipping out over it. I thought this is phenomenal. This is a really great. It's a great song, great melody. Just the whole thing, and seemed like it was right up my alley. And I had already cut my sides for my contractually for what we had already mastered my 6 sides, the whole thing, and so I sent that song to Dan, and Dan was like, "This is killer. Let's cut this." And we cut it. Golly, it's been so long. I think we cut this at the Sound Kitchen in Franklin, and it was a hit, but not like a big hit here in the States. My label at that time was they were in transition. A lot of people were changing over. They were having some bouts with the New York offices with finances. And I think some of that record got lost in the throes of some of that. But so I think it was 2014 or 15. A buddy of mine texted me, and it was like 4:00 in the morning. He goes, "Dude, I'm in a monsoon and I'm at a stoplight in Manila, and God Gave Me You is on the radio in this car." And, and I woke up the next morning, I got the text. I was like, "Wow, that's so cool." I didn't think anything of it. And then, it just started to snowball after that. I started getting lots and lots of texts like that from people that I knew that had traveled over there or whatever. And so long story short, there's a variety show over there that had a couple, a super couple on this show, and they just happened to make this song their theme song. And that sort of, I think, sent the song into orbit over there. It was the most downloaded and streamed song there for 2 or 3 years in a row. I ended up going over there to do several shows, and it was just really unbelievable. I haven't seen that kind of frenzied activity since, I don't know, 1996 or something. It was really, they had said, you're going to need to have security, taken care of before you guys get off the plane. And I was kind of like, yeah, come on. I really was. I was like, all right, come on. And we got there, and it really was the case. It was, people literally were going nuts. And I took a lot of my friends with me. Half of the band was Rascal Flatts band. I know all those guys, and great players. And we put a big, long 90-minute show together. We played at Smart Araneta Coliseum there. And people were crying, and I was crying. I remember when we started the intro of "God Gave Me You," the arena absolutely erupted, and it really hit me in such a impactful way. I saw people crying, so I start crying, and I'm like, I'm on the other side of the world in the East, and these people are singing every word of this song, and we did a lot of TV there, a lot of meet and greets, and we did a couple of mall performances. And malls are a big deal over there. I don't know if you know, but they're like huge. They're like 5, 6 decker malls, 6-level malls, and like thousands of people showed up for these, just like we would do like a radio station 30-minute set. And I mean, just like boom, I mean, just tons of people. I have pictures I'll show you, but it was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe. It just goes to show you that, outside our world here, people don't necessarily follow trends like our world, our culture does here. They love something because it made an impact on them. They're not following it or chasing it because everybody else is chasing it, And I'm just so proud that song found a home and became a hit somewhere, because I always believed in it.
Yeah.
Long answer. Sorry.
No, that's great. I love it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Shania Twain.
Okay.
That was also just another huge moment in your career. From this moment on, you and Shania were able to do a duet of that song. I got to dive into that one a little bit too. So what's the story there?
I tell this story on stage a lot. I was asleep on the bus, and I think the show we were loading in for a show in Chicago somewhere, and it was before cell phones really, and we had a wall phone, like an analog, super expensive phone, as we called it back in those days, and you used it for emergencies only. And Brinson, my tour manager, who now manages Clint Black, he kind of shook me and pulled the curtain back, woke me up. He goes, get up, you need to wake up Shania Twain and Mutt Lange on the phone. And there was always so much there's so much practical joking going on all the time with, it was like high school on wheels, and so I didn't really buy it. I was like, what who's on the phone? I thought it was some sort of prank or something, but it was them. And I got up and kind of cleared my throat and tried to wake up. You know how you try to, if somebody important calls and you've just woken up, you try to sound like you've been awake
for a couple hours. Yeah.
Like you're getting stuff done. Yeah. That was what I was doing. And sounded like they were sort of in the middle of kind of polishing the tune up, getting it done. And they both, were very polite. They're, Shania said, I love your voice. She said, you're my favorite singer in country music. She said, you're the Paul Carrack of country music. And of course I loved Paul Carrack, and I couldn't believe I was on the phone with him. They're setting the world on fire at that moment. And they said, would you be interested in doing a duet on this next record? And, I said, absolutely. I'd be more than thrilled to be a part of it. And so they said, okay, well, here's the chorus. And so she sang about a half chorus to me, and she's like, can you kind of sing
over
that?
the phone? Yeah.
Can you kind of sing that back to us? We're trying to key it up and get it in the right key, because we're going to go ahead and fast track this thing and like get it tracked soon. And so I sang it back to him as best as I could. And we kind of found a good key. And literally 2 weeks later, the studio doesn't exist anymore. The tracking room here, I went and I thought I was just going to pick up a cassette, with a lyric. And they said, no, Mutt and Shania are in the back tracking room. They want you to come back and say hey. And I hung out with them for an hour or so, and they didn't have a demo of it. So they had a little MIDI track that they had put, I'm sure Mutt had built, and they had a little jam box, and they put a blank cassette in this jam box and hit record. And then Mutt hit play on the BRC, played this track over the big monitors, and they both sang it to me as a duet together. And I've still got a copy of that to this day. The only person that has a copy of that is Shania, because I sent it to her for her documentary that she did. And they sang the crap out of it, just sitting right in front of me. And 2 weeks later, I flew up to Lake Placid, New York, flew up into, I think, Ontario, and then came back down to upstate. And I spent, probably 3 days with him and just worked really hard, meticulously on my part. And we had a lot of fun. And it was just a very memorable time in my life. It's still real vivid in my brain. I can't, they could have called anybody. And I'm just so grateful that they allowed me to be a part of that. It was just awesome.
Well, it's a testament to you and your voice and the person you are. So,
well, it's one of those moments where I was really young, and you have a lot to prove when you're a kid. You're like, I got to be my best, and I really tried my best to be, to be the best, and to really sell my end of the song as much as possible. And I worked so hard. I mean, I sat for hours with that song and just learned it. And the melody and all of his parts that he sang, I assumed that he wanted me to cop those things, those little intricacies. And so I did. And he gave me some liberties, which was really cool. But I tried to stick to the script as much as possible. But man, what a song.
Yeah.
Changes keys like 3 times, it's like a lot of falsetto stuff in it. And it was definitely, and still is, a very challenging, it's a really challenging song vocally to do. So yeah,
man, so good. Okay, let's dive into a little bit of your career as a songwriter. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a few people that you've written with, like James Dean Hicks, great writers. Other guys like Scotty Emmerich, who you're good friends with, and like what would you say, whether it's a song that you've recorded or Neil or Diamond Rio or somebody else has recorded, or even a song that's maybe not out there yet? What would you say your favorite song that you've ever written is?
Oh man, that's a hard one. It's always the one you wrote yesterday, no. Maybe my favorite song that I've been a part of, I think it probably is this one for personal reasons. And out of some of my toughest struggles, I wrote a song with Alan Shamblin, the only song I've ever written with Alan. It was really a spiritual 3 or 4 days we worked hard on this song, and some days that we would show up, we would sit and talk and pray and wouldn't write anything. Maybe we'd write one line and then go to lunch. And so we weren't in a rush to finish it. We wanted it to be the best it could be. And he knew it was personal to me. It was a song called Dustbowl Dreams. It's a song that I wrote for my first independent record after I left Warner Brothers, after I'd sort of fulfilled my contract there. And it was just a song about really going back to my roots and remembering where I come from, because that's where you get a lot of your strength from. Mm-hmm. And I had read a book. I'd lost my granddad, who was my hero, kind of the consummate Southwesterner, American hard worker, auctioneer, cattle farmer. It just always was, he's always the bar for me. He was always that, great people person. And so that was a big blow for me. And I was, struggling with some, career things and vocal things during that time. And I reconnected with my roots as an Oklahoman. And I read this book, this Timothy Egan book called The Worst Hard Time. And it was about the Dust Bowl. And it's about all the people that survived the Dust Bowl. And I think somewhere during reading that book, I realized that the reason that I'm an Oklahoman is because somebody persevered and fought and pushed through and decided, I'm not going to California. I'm staying right here. This is where I belong. And when I thought that through, it hit me. And I didn't even really have a title when I went out to write with Alan. That came out of our conversation. And it's one of the songs I'm most proud of, just because it's so much me. It's so much about persevering. And I love the treatment of the track. Everybody on the track's from Oklahoma. Wade Hayes played baritone electric on the track. Vince played mandolin. The Oklahoma City University Orchestra they did the entire score, recorded the strings in Oklahoma City. So my brother's singing on it. It's just it's an Oklahoma affair. You know, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
can you play a little bit of that one?
Oh yeah, gosh, throwing little tricks at me this morning.
I know,
man.
right?
I'm gonna have to tune for 3 hours again. So, no, it's. Let's see here.
Grasshoppers in the wheat field, my brother and my cousins, and time to kill. Old wells and hay bales, and cuckleburrs in our shoes. I walk running to the muddy pond, big talking and carrying on. Catching fish and watching the sun slip out of that big red sky. I'm a son of an auctioneer. I press on and I persevere, and I don't forget where I come from. And I'm finding out what love and real life means. Lord, I hope they're proud of me, carrying on these Dustbowl Dreams.
So
I haven't
good,
played that
man.
in a while, but
Man, it's so good.
I just love that tune, and I tried to kind of give it a treatment that kind of had a bit of a Wichita lineman kind of a vibe, you know. I was just thinking about all of those little textures and treatments that I loved about Glenn Campbell's records, and it's kind of got a little, it kind of harkens to some of that Glenn stuff. So
yeah, so good, man. You kind of mentioned when you were setting that up. I want to touch on this a little bit because I'm just curious about the struggles.
Yeah.
You got, again, you got signed at 20 years old. You had such great success so quickly and kind of got thrown into stardom like right away. And you were out on the road and like all that. And it got to you a little bit. And you ended up having to take some time off and all of that. Like, can you talk a little bit about the struggles of what it was like going through all of that at a young age?
Sure. I'd always try, again, I'm always trying to condense things because I don't want to bore anybody. I'm always trying to give everybody the Reader's Digest version. But, I don't think nobody's designed to handle fame to any degree. I can't imagine the Taylor Swifts of the world and Michael Jackson and those. I mean, it's really hard for it to not. It's almost like I don't know how somebody handles that level. And all that happened to me was really difficult too, in a lot of respects, because I went straight from high school to all of a sudden I'm swept up in this success wave, and I don't even know who I am. I'm still growing up, and I'm trying to figure out who I am, much less figure out who I am as an artist and as a writer. But at the same time, it was just total bliss. I'm working with my heroes, and people like my voice, and the records are doing well, and you get kind of swept up in the game of the whole thing, and you realize you've got a market, and you kind of think, well, I know this is what people want to hear from me, so you start trying to sort of corral everything into that little sound, because you don't want to lose what you got. So that first little fear sits in, that we don't want to stop having hits, and you got a label that's telling you all the, we got to have this and this, and you're out there grinding it and doing radio tours, and you're I don't know how I stood up in a lot of that energy wise, because it was just we were just go go go, and somewhere in the middle of that, I think it would have been 1998, which was a really wonderful, memorable year. I did a huge tour with Leanne Rimes that year, and I think the first kind of blow to my psyche and my confidence, you kind of start drinking your own Kool-Aid at some point. You're having hits and you're successful, and you kind of think in your mind that this has never happened to anybody. You start thinking kind of, well, I'm kind of special. That's you're a kid, so you don't know who you are. You just know you like the way it feels, and so you have a degree of humility, but at the same time you want to kick everybody's butt out there, and you start getting competitive, and you start you've kind of got yourself sort of on your own little pedestal, if you will. And in my opinion, I think it was really God doing some things that sort of knocked me off my little whatever, my horse, that it ultimately changed my life forever in a great way. But I started having some confidence issues when my records started to sort of wane and not do as well. And you could chalk that up to a lot of different things, but I still, in the big picture of it all, I think it was really just God, my wake up call for me, finding Him in a real way. And because of some of those records not having success on that fourth record, and I was kind of reading some of my own mail and some of the critiques on the record, and it really got to me, and it really hurt my confidence a lot, which is really goofy. But when you're a kid, when you're young, all that stuff seems to matter to you, because you're kind of conditioned to try to continue to keep pleasing everybody, and you and I know we can't do that, you know. And so, and my label shut down in the middle of that, and so I started kind of struggling. I guess, they say that your stress goes wherever your worry is. It already is. It lands somewhere in your body, and that's where all my stress went, was right here. And I just started struggling. Started having a tough time producing a tone on stage, and I was just nauseous to walk out on stage. And I had all these people that were working for me, and it was just a real high stress time of my life. This would have been at the end of '98. And so I decided to really shut it down and step away for a little bit to sort of regroup, get away from singing for a little bit, and try to remember why I started singing and why I want to sing and why I want to make music. And amidst that, I grew up in church, but I wasn't really a big church goer. I was I was a very nominal church goer. We went on special occasions, but I always looked at myself as kind of a Proverbs 22:6 kid. I went back to what I knew, and I just started really vulnerably reaching out to God, really in a selfish way in the beginning, because I was like, I want my confidence back. I want my voice back, all these things. And while searching out those things, I really I figured out some things about myself, and I developed a really great relationship with my Creator, and I've never been the same since. Obviously I haven't arrived. I think that our walk is something that we're constantly getting, hopefully refining and getting better and closer to Him for the rest of our life. But it put me on a path that I don't think, who's to say where I would have ended up had things continued to just do this. I don't know. I think He knew. I think God knows more than I know. So I have to just be thankful that it happened the way it did, because it I don't know, I have to think that it was the right thing. I wouldn't change anything about it. It really sucked. And there were a lot of dark days, lots of tears, a lot of anger, went through a real bitter phase where it was really hard for me to be happy for my friends that were having success. I mean, it was really, really hard. And some of them were artists, and I wouldn't watch the CMAs for a long time. I wouldn't even turn the TV on. I wouldn't go to the awards. It was a big, big struggle for me for a while, and I had to really get over that. I had to ask for forgiveness. I had to let that go and start finding a way to celebrate my friends and celebrate people that I loved, and that's a hill that I'm way over that, and in a great, I'm in a great place now. I'm very happy, but there was a time where it was really difficult for me to deal with everybody else's success, but I have found my voice again. My voice is not exactly the same as it used to be, but I have some nights where I walk off stage and I'm literally turning cartwheels because I sound like I'm 20.
Yeah.
But then there's other nights. So I have to really take care of myself. I stay pretty athletic. I run quite a bit. I don't drink alcohol. I drink water and tea, and I really try to just stay hydrated and do the best things mentally for me, especially on show days. I kind of have a regimen of things that I do just to stay focused and do my best. Some songs I don't do in the original key. I do them lower, but all that to say, I found my voice in the literal way and in the physical way. I'm in a great place, but I wouldn't change any of it, because it's all, I wouldn't be me now if none of that stuff had happened. And I'm really grateful for the struggles too. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but I really am grateful for those days.
Beautifully spoken.
So
yeah, so good. And I mean, 30 years after these first songs came out and became #1 hits, we've been doing your fan party here at the listening room for so many years, and we just did it a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
For this year's CMA Fest, and you're still packing out the room with fans. So I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, it is, man. And I when I go out and play still, and I still get to go play. I'm constantly in a state of gratitude, because those songs were huge impacts on a lot of people's lives, including mine. But my phone still rings because of that time period, and I'm so grateful. It's music is different for me now in that it's kind of it takes a backseat to my family. It's something I still get to do, and I love it, and it takes care of my family, and it takes me all over the place. And I still, man, it's crazy. 30 years later, when you start the intro to whatever, Rebecca Lynn or something, and I mean, just to watch the sea of people and their reaction to it, I mean, there's just nothing like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can attest to that. I'm one of those people. I love it. Well, man, thank you so much for spending a little bit of your morning with us and sharing the Reader's Digest version of the things that you've gone through. I've been really, really excited to do this. I think we've been talking about doing this for a year and a half or so now, but to wrap up, I always end with the same question. And you mentioned just a little bit ago that you wouldn't change anything. So maybe you don't have an answer for this, but if you can go back to 8-year-old Bryan in Oklahoma and everything that you've been through, and you're now sitting here on this couch, what advice would you give yourself today?
I'd probably say something like, keep having fun. Always make it fun. Don't think. Don't be cerebral about it. That just always have fun and always enjoy it. And if it gets not fun, step away from it for a little while. And don't overthink. maybe the theme would be don't overthink, you know?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that kind of gets us in the gutter sometimes, you know? And I tell people all the time that sometimes having success is kind of the little catalyst for overthinking, you know, because then you're like, oh, well, we got to do this again and again, and I've got to, you know, you've kind of feel like you got lightning in a bottle, so you want to keep it in that bottle, and sometimes that can cause a lot of anxiety and overthinking. And I think in my case, and that was definitely the case for me. So yeah, don't overthink.
So good.
So
I love it. Well, dude, thank you again so much. I love you, brother. It's been
my pleasure.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
Been a
Anytime.
Blast. Yeah.
And hey, thank you always for so many kind words. You've introed me before I've come on stage quite a bit, and I know you mean that stuff. So just want you to know that means a lot to me too. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of everything that you guys are doing here and your college years, and
yeah.
So it means a lot. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Everybody out there, thank you so much. You've been listening to another episode of Stories Behind the Song, and this has been an artist twist with Bryan White. So thanks for listening. Make sure that you check out the liner notes. We'll give links to all of Bryan's socials and website and all of that stuff, and ways to follow him and support him. And yeah, just thanks for everything. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. Make sure to give us a follow on Spotify if you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you click that notification button so you can keep notified when new episodes come out. We release brand new episodes every Tuesday, and you can find us on YouTube at Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to send us a comment letting us know what you thought of the episodes. We love getting your feedback, and share this with your friends. The more we grow, the more that we can keep doing this. It's our mission to bring you all of these great stories behind the songs from some of Nashville's most iconic artists and songwriters, publishers, producers, everyone in between, and a lot of my great friends. We love what we do, and we love sharing their stories with you. We appreciate all of the continued support. Thanks also to all of our sponsors, and we will see you all next week.